I'm Scott Davis, an assistant professor of marketing at University of Houston Downtown, Marilyn Davies College of Business. And I'm so excited to introduce this interview with Eric SanInocencio, Senior Director of Digital Media for the Houston Texans. In this interview, we talk about social media analytics, how to allocate money across social media channels, and how to break into the field if you're interested. I know you're going to get so many interesting nuggets out of this interview. I hope that you enjoy it. Let's go. All right, Eric. First, I want to thank you for joining us. It's such an awesome opportunity for our students to be able to connect with practitioners, particularly when they work for such a cool organization as the Houston Texans. So I just want to extend a hearty thank you for agreeing to sit down for this interview.
Yeah, always great to talk to you, and I'm always happy to help and give some behind the scenes of what it's like to actually work in sports digital media.
Awesome. And sticking with that subject of sports digital media, I imagine there's a lot of people who want to work for professional sports teams, especially in the NFL. And there's probably a greater number of people who want to work in digital media right now. So this is a really nice intersection. And I imagine everybody wants a job kind of doing what you're doing. So I want to start by asking how you earned your way into this position with the Houston Texans.
Yeah, it's a unique trip. It's been an interesting journey for me. I first started in sports information because when I graduated college back in 2003, digital and social media didn't exist. So I came out just more of your journalism background, and then I stumbled into sports information. I've played sports my whole life. I played baseball in college, so I've always been interested in sports. And really, Scott, my goal in life has been to find something I really enjoy and then find a way for somebody to pay me to do it. And so it's kind of what I've tried to do throughout my career. So I started in sports information. I worked at UAB, mostly the collegiate level at the SEC. And then I went to the Gulf South Conference, which is a Division II league in Birmingham. This was around 2006, 2007. Facebook and Twitter were kind of in their infant stages. But again, I knew I liked to use them from a personal sense. I really enjoyed the interaction and the way that you could meet new people. And so my brain started working. How can I make this a part of my job? And how can I make this something that we can use in our field? So at the GSC, judging by most people, they don't know where it is. I'm sure most of your students won't know either, but there's still great stories and great things happening among the athletes that are participating there. So we started to use Facebook as a way to push our content out. How can we reach alums of these schools? How can we find ways to interact with people in these different cities where these events were happening? And we started to have some success. It was actually pretty crazy. I remember we celebrated like we had won a national championship when we got 2,000 likes on Facebook. Like that was a really big deal back in 2007. And so when I was doing that at the GSC, the Southeastern Conference, which is also in Birmingham, they noticed and they came to me with the opportunity, hey, can you build our digital network? We don't really have social media feeds. We don't have a social media page. Can you help us get this started? And that was the first time in my career that my title changed from sports information to digital media. And that was in 2009. And 8 years later, here I am with the Houston Texans. So it's been quite the ride.
That's an awesome story. And I imagine your story is a lot different than what the story would look like for one of my students, for example, who's entering this field after either after undergraduate or after earning an MBA. So that's a really interesting path because it was a success of timing and also just recognizing an opportunity, which is really neat. Now to get to your job sounds really cool. But to be completely transparent, one thing that I look at as a huge disadvantage is that you're kind of always on the clock, so to speak, which is another reason that I'm so thrilled that you were able to join me because there's probably stuff blowing up on social media right now that you should be attending to. So again, your time is really appreciated. But my question is, could you kind of briefly walk us through a day in the life of being the senior director of social media for the Houston Texans?
Yeah, and the first thing I would say is that for your students to realize is that they have the most powerful piece of technology they carry around in their pocket with them every day. It's this phone. And what this phone has changed is the way we consume content, but also the timeliness with which we consume content. Everything is instant now. We're one push away from finding everything we want to know, whether it's in the movie world, pop culture, government, politics, and sports. So when you see all that intersect, to your point, you're kind of always constantly on the clock because things happen in real time. But I think for me, my morning starts, I wake up and usually the first thing I check is again the phone to make sure things are kind of how we line them up. You get into a bit of a routine, especially in season, in terms of how you're covering the team. There's press conferences. There's news stories that we're constantly pumping out. But for me, I actually have 3 screens at work. And I've got Twitter on one. I've got the software called Chartbeat where I'm measuring our website. And I feel like I'm in almost kind of like the stock market. It's kind of the way I feel because you're just measuring all this engagement as it's happening. And then if you see something pop, you want to be ready with your writers and your content creators. Hey, something happened today. Dwayne Brown showed up back at our facility today. So let's make sure that we're covering it with A, B, and C. So I think you're monitoring more than anything. Like you may only send out 10 tweets in a day, but that doesn't mean you didn't monitor TweetDeck for 8 hours to do that. So I think you're constantly in a state of observation. And then from there, you're using your knowledge of your team, of your fan base, of your audience to create content that encapsulates what happened in that day and also is relevant to them as big fans and followers of your team.
That's really cool. So I like the analogy you made to kind of monitoring the stock market because it really shows one of the ways in which this field has evolved because it seems like in 2009, 2010, people didn't really know what they were doing. They just felt like they should have a voice in this space, but they didn't know how to measure anything. So it's a new world now. And I think that if you're going to go into digital marketing or social media marketing, you have to have a really strong grasp of analytics. You mentioned Chartbeat, which I assume is an analytical tool that you're using. So is there have you garnered any really cool insights out of marketing analytics? Is there a story you can share with us where, if you weren't monitoring social media, you would have missed something?
Yeah, I think there's several great stories. There's one I always like to tell, but to your point, I think you make a really great point in that the first thing that we teach is how do you measure the success that we're having or what we're doing on social media. So I have, 2 coordinators that work with us as part of our team that monitor social alongside with me. And every week they're tasked with doing a report of, what's the top engagement? How did we get that engagement? Where are they coming to our app from? There's all these different pieces. And to your point, back in 2009, each platform was off on its own. It was a silo. Essentially now, all those platforms are basically their own websites. So, for Facebook, you have a different audience. Well, when do they like to engage with you? What's their age? Because it's important to have a great idea. But if you're coming to somebody, especially a hiring manager, I have this great idea. If you can show the analytics and the data that backs up what you're trying to produce for a social media campaign, it makes it that much more likely that they'll let you try it or that they'll believe in your hypothesis. So I think analytics is the key. We're so grounded in that. And it's very important because that's the first thing that I have to teach them, because if you come up with an idea, that's great. But how do you measure it? Because a lot of times in social media, everything that you think will work won't. And you need to be able to figure out why it didn't. But I think when it comes to being able to monitor it as far as creating content, a great story I like to tell is I do yearly reports that break down where our fans are from, whether they're coming from Texas, Los Angeles, all these different markets. And what I saw is that we had the top 10 markets, or what you would expect for the Texans, everything in Texas, San Antonio, Houston. All of a sudden, number 9 was this town called Moses Lake, Washington. I was like, man, I've never even heard of this. So that was on our website analytics using Adobe. Then I went to our podcast analytics and things that we use to measure our radio. And I saw that we have this live stream that's always on in Moses Lake. You can see the little pin drop, and it's kind of 3 hours east of Seattle. Like, what's going on here? So I started to look up, and all these different page views that we're getting almost 125,000 page views a year from this town called Moses Lake. And there's like 5,000 people that live there. So I wrote an article just putting all that together, and I called it Paging Moses Lake, because I wanted to know, and I talked about those analytics. And I was like, who are these people out there? Why do we have such a big following in this small town? And who are you fans? And what was beautiful about it, Scott, is that once I put that out on our social media channels, people started commenting. And you could see, like, I'm from Moses Lake. There used to be an oil factory out here, and I moved from Houston. Or, hey, I moved to Seattle, and then I retired out here. And then you started seeing people in the comments connecting with each other. Like, oh, my God, you live in Moses Lake? I live in Moses Lake. And they started to see how many Texans fans were there. And now they have their own little club out in Moses Lake where they watch games on Sunday. We sent them some gear up there. Like, it was a really cool experiment using analytics to find out who these people were, but then taking a next level, creating content around it, and then actually allowing them to connect and build a further bond in terms of following the Texans, but in an area that you wouldn't expect. So it was a really cool experience to go through.
Oh, that's such a cool story. If they weren't already lifelong Texans fans, right now they will be. They won't be lured away by Seattle or whoever else they might follow up in the Northwest. So
Okay, well, we'll see after we play them this weekend.
Right. Oh, that's right. That's cool. Very good. So one thing you mentioned that I think is interesting is how these social media channels used to be kind of silos, and you were analyzing each one independently. You also mentioned different mediums like your podcast, your website, your Facebook page. So one thing that seems really daunting for me as a marketer is, how do you decide where to spend money? I'm assuming you're advertising on some of these channels. So I have some opinions that aren't really informed by the real world about where you should spend money on social media. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. How do you make those decisions? Where are the Texans focusing their efforts?
I think the first thing I would encourage your students or anybody entering in the business is, don't feel the need to have to be in every single space. Like, I think one thing marketers run into is, just because there's 8 or 9 different social media platforms, we feel like we've got to be active in every one of them. And I don't think that's the case. I'd rather be really good at 1 or 2 than try to be, average in 7 or 8. And I think all of this starts with, who is your audience? So if you're a marketer, if you're working for a company, or I'm working for the Texans, I need to know, who are the people that are engaging with me? What are their ages? What are their backgrounds? Where do they come from? Where do they work? And I think from then you can start to figure out what platform makes the most sense for you to advertise. So I think you look at it on a case-by-case basis. For me, if I'm looking specifically for bulk, like the amount, how can I reach more people, whether it's video views or whether it's a particular contest we're running with a partner, Facebook probably makes the most sense, simply because, A, you get a lot of great engagement there, but we have the biggest follower base on Facebook. Now, if it's something that's a little bit more photo specific, if we're running something for maybe one of our barbecue events, or if we're doing some stuff for our gift shop that's more visual, like we're trying to sell merchandise, then we'll choose Instagram. But again, I think, and we do this all the time with our partners that want to work with us and they want to do, because the first thing they'll ask me, Scott, they're like, oh, I just want to be on social media. And they may not know, and that's okay. But then we'll drill down, like, what is the goal of what you're trying to accomplish? Are you trying to get people to sign up for something? Are you trying to make them more aware of your partnership with us? And once you figure that out, then the next question I ask is, who are the audience you're looking to reach? I think from there, and each platform does a very good job of breaking this down for you. Like, you can go into your Facebook Insights if you have a page, and it tells you what age group you have the most followers in, where they come from, cities. Twitter's kind of similar like that as well, where you can look in the analytics and see how many people are following you. Instagram has similar versions of this. And then there's websites and products like CrowdTangle and things like that that can bring it all together for you. But I think once you know that, then you can formulate a plan of how to spend your dollars. I would say for us, about 75% of what we spend is on Facebook, just because most of it is bulk in general. But we have done some stuff on Instagram. And Twitter for us is more of a real-time news service, so we haven't really delved into ad placement there. But I think, again, if you're a news service or if you're trying to get out a message that's urgent, Twitter might be the better fit for you. So once you have those questions answered, you can begin to better formulate a plan on where to spend your ad dollars and how you want to spend them.
Oh, that's really good insight. So how does the impact look for something like a Facebook ad versus a radio ad? I imagine the granularity of targeting is much different.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think Facebook gives you some metrics where you can line it up. Like, you can find out, for instance, how much it costs you to get a link click. So if your job is, I'm making a post and I want people to click on this link so they can sign up for a fan club or they can register for an event that we're having, it'll break down to the moment how much you're spending. So that's a great way to look at it. I think radio, you look at it in bulk, and you have to, because we're doing so many radio shows. So an ad just doesn't run on our Texans Monday program from 8 to 10. It may also run on our Texans All Access. So I think what you do is you take the amount of that and then you get recognition and you use other tools. We use J.D. Power and stuff like that and focus groups to kind of gauge brand affinity with our product at the Texans. And then we can present that to them in a recap and say, listen, this is what you spent on the radio side. This is the value you got for it. And then on the digital side, here's how you did it. So I think it's hard to compare because, like you said, on the digital side, you're so much more targeted. But on radio, it's more about affinity and brand awareness, and you're reaching a certain amount of people almost every time you do it. So I think they have their pros and cons depending, again, on what you're looking for and what your goal is within that campaign.
Sure, and I like the way you stated it, that you start with your client's goals, or even internally with what are your own goals, and who's the audience. Those are really the key questions. It's, who are we working with, and why are we doing this? And one of the maybe old tendencies in social media was to kind of find experts who would just through hubris maybe assume I'm the expert. This is what we're going to do. These are the channels we focus on. But through analytics and experience, the game certainly has changed quite a lot, even in the last probably year, let alone 3 years or 5 years.
Yeah, I personally hate when a person says they're a social media expert, because I think there's no such thing. It's only been around for 10 to 12 years. So I don't know how you could possibly be an expert on something that not only changes every quarter, but also has only been around a decade. Think about things that we've been arguing about for hundreds of years. Then you might become an expert. So I don't think that term is accurate, nor does it really exist. Because again, like, you may have been expert 2 years ago, but Snapchat wasn't around 2 years ago. How do you monetize that? How do you use it as part of your overall strategy? So I think once you start to ask those questions and you get that information locked down, then what you can figure out through trial and error, a lot of this, I wish there was some magic secret, but a lot of times we're just trying. We may have made a mistake. It worked. It didn't. How do we improve? Look at the numbers to make a better suggestion the next time. And the beauty of social media is that once you start a campaign, you'll get feedback pretty instantly. You'll know whether it went good or bad almost immediately on these social media channels. So again, it's a good learning experience, but you have to take the hubris out of it, because you're going to have some swings and misses. So again, ask those questions. And if you feel like you have the data points that you want, you can take your best attempt to make it work.
That's awesome. Hopefully everyone's scrubbing expert from their LinkedIn profiles right now.
That's funny. I think social is, it's like many things, right? Like, the person who promotes themselves the most oftentimes gets the favor or gets the benefit of the doubt that they're an expert, just because they tell you over and over that they're an expert. What I found in my time working in digital is if somebody has to tell you how good they are, they're probably not. So, for me, it's what can you show me relative to campaigns, and what kind of data can you show me that proves that you've had some successful luck. And again, right, when you did fail, how did you fix that? How did you work through? What was your process to try again so that you'd have more success the next time?
Awesome. Really good stuff. Are y'all doing anything outside of the U.S.?
Yeah, we actually are. Last year, we played in Mexico City. We took on the Raiders on Monday Night Football. So that was the first opportunity for us to really delve outside the country. We actually have quite a bit of a following in Mexico City. Mexico City is actually our second biggest city in terms of followers on Facebook, behind Houston. So We've actually really dug in there. Obviously, natural connection, we're close. A lot of people from Mexico obviously moved up to Houston. There's a bit of a connection, but we're a relatively young franchise. So to have those numbers was a really good start. So we started our Somos Texans campaign, and it worked really well. We had our players go down, visit different areas in CDMX, which is what they call it. And we got a great response and great following. So that was our first foray, and we had some success. And then this year, the NFL chose us as one of the pilot teams to have what's called a Weibo account. And Weibo is a social media platform in China. So we've actually had the opportunity to work with a marketing agency in China to help build a fan base for the Texans. And we send them a lot of their content. And we also do some customized content for maybe they have a fall festival that we kind of had one of our players try to pronounce in Chinese what the festival was. So we've done some fun stuff there. Also sent them some pictures and cool things. So we're now officially pushing hard in Mexico and China. And again, the returns have been pretty interesting to see. And, it's funny when you go to Weibo and you look at the platform and our Twitter handle. I call it Twitter because that's what it kind of looks like to me. But when you look at our Weibo handle, it's all written in Mandarin. And then all of a sudden you see all these people responding to it. It's just really cool. It shows you how big the world is. But it's a great opportunity for us to continue to grow our brand.
That's really cool. Did you have some built-in fans in China because of Yao Ming with the Houston Rockets?
Well, not us necessarily, but we had name recognition with Houston.
Right.
I think that was, and the Rockets have done a fantastic job. I think the NBA in general, they've kind of been way ahead of us on this front. And when I say us, I mean the NFL. And I think it's only natural because they had Yao, and basketball has really embraced the global aspect of it, while the NFL has been more domestic and trying to own the area here in the United States. But I think we realize as a league that we've got to continue to market our game outside the borders of the United States. So I do think there was definitely some help there. But I think even things like JJ, Deshaun Watson, they get excited about a lot of stars and star power. The number one most followed franchise over there is the Patriots, which makes a lot of sense. They have Super Bowls. They have Tom Brady. Tom Brady went over there. So I think the NFL is definitely trying to work its way into the conversation when it comes to the sports fans in China. We're pretty far behind the NBA and obviously the soccer, worldwide soccer, Manchester United, all those clubs, Real Madrid have really big followings in China. But I think we're off to a really positive start. And I do think the Rockets connection helps because we do things together among the organizations. But I also think, too, like just the work we've done trying to provide some unique content for them, it's almost like, hey, somebody's actually doing something for us, and it's really worked well.
That's really cool. One thing that I love about catching up with you, we get to chat maybe once a semester, and I think it's always different. You know, some people, I think if we were catching up once a semester, just be kind of going through the same old. But with you, your job changes all the time, which I think that's probably stressful in a lot of ways. But I also think it's so neat how dynamic the field is.
One thing I always say to our people that are looking to work in the field when I talk to students is that you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Because the moment you think you've mastered a strategy for a platform, an algorithm will change on you, or a new platform will emerge, or something will happen on that platform that will change your strategy. So I think to your point, it can be very stressful because just when you feel like, oh, I've got this thing down and we're moving in the right direction, there's a seismic change that happens, or there's something that completely alters or makes irrelevant what you planned on doing. I think the beauty of that is that no day is ever the same. I know a lot of people say that about their job, but when it comes to what I do, I'm very fortunate. When I go to work every day, I can't anticipate and figure out like, oh, this is what's going to happen. And I think that's kind of fun because it keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, that's really cool. So one thing I'm gonna claim that you have a certain advantage since you work for the Houston Texans in that you have a built-in audience.
Without a doubt.
You have huge followings on Twitter and on Facebook. A lot of students that I encounter are entrepreneurs. They're running their own business. They're just kind of trying to figure out how the heck do I even get started? Do you have any advice for people like that?
I think the first thing that they need to do is try. I think sometimes it can be daunting and it's like, oh man, I have all these platforms. I don't know where to get started. Just start. I think that can be the biggest advantage because it's just like anything else that you do as part of your career. The more you do it, the better you will get at it. So I think just getting on these platforms, and again, they don't have to get on every single one, but pick one or two and dive in. That would be my first piece of advice. And then secondarily, like we talked about from the analytics side, figure out who your customer base is. You may not have a big following on Facebook, but you may run a restaurant and you may have the ability to collect emails so that you can build a fan club there and then transition that over to the digital side. You may know, oh, all these people that signed up for my fan club are in between 40 and 54. They really love what we're cooking in our restaurant. Well, then, hey, buy an ad targeting those people in the city that you work in so that they can follow your product. So again, just trail those analytics, trail those numbers, and try to find ways where you can fit in the conversation. And I think, too, just be visual. We're becoming a very picture and video-oriented society. The written word isn't as popular as it used to be. So that's fantastic if you're in marketing because you can tell the story visually and it be appealing and you can get a lot of notice. I mean, you think of, some of the great, I always go back to the NWA when they had the Straight Outta Compton movie and Beats put together the overlay that said straight out of, and then you would put what city you were from, and then you would be happy to post that on your social media channels. But all you were doing, you didn't realize it, there was a Beats logo on it, there was a movie logo on it. You were promoting their movie for free. And it was pretty brilliant because it was great content that you could customize for yourself. Like I did it. I put straight out of Birmingham, straight out of all these places just to kind of see. And all that time you were just continually promoting the movie for them. So again, finding unique and creative ways to tell that story on a visual basis can allow you to really jump in and get some traction.
Okay, really cool. And I think we're down to my last question, so you'll be off the hot seat here in just a sec. Although you're very cool, so I don't think it's really a hot seat for you. But it's related to my question about entrepreneurs. But if a student is looking to get a job like yours, so working for a medium to large sized organization in social media, what kind of things should they be doing today to make themselves appealing once they hit the job market?
I think they need to, first off, quantify the social media activity that they're already doing. So they're in a unique situation. Most graduate students and really undergraduates as well, they're going to come into the digital world with more experience likely than the person that hires them. So again, that's a really unique situation that doesn't happen in many other fields. So all this time that they're spending on social media with their friends or with their family, that's actual real world experience. So again, going back and figuring out like, how are you doing things? What works well on the platforms? That'd be the first step. And I think secondarily, you've got to find a way to put some experience on your resume that shows you've been in control of one of these handles. I go back to my story. I started at Division II level. It wasn't the sexiest job, wasn't the most exciting. I wasn't working with J.J. Watt and Deshaun Watson like I am now. But it gave me the opportunity to be in control of a handle and run campaigns and have positive and negative success stories that I could share, things I did. So again, if you're wanting to work in sports, I think college is a fantastic route to go. There's only so many teams in the NFL, but there's hundreds of colleges that need a lot of help that have multiple sports. So that's a good way to go. And I think if you're just trying to get into any business, you may have to start a little smaller, but you need something on your resume that shows me as a hiring manager that, hey, I've been the voice of something before, or I've run campaigns on these specific platforms for X company. So I think if you can find that, whether it's through an internship, whether that's volunteering, whether that's helping with a campaign, helping with a nonprofit, just getting something that shows that you've been in control, and then learning to quantify what you've done personally. You build that together and you got a pretty good package to start when it comes to entering this field.
Awesome. That's such great advice. I was just thinking, I can talk about social media and our textbook mentions social media. I can talk about it until I turn blue from the academic perspective, but just in sitting down with you for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, I feel like this is more information than I could ever hope to espouse to my students. So I appreciate you talking to me so much, and we'll probably have to catch up every semester because the information continues to update. And 2 years from now, people won't know what you're talking about when you mention Snapchat or Twitter or one of these platforms.
They may buy Snapchat and just merge it right into Facebook. We have no idea what's coming, but I think it's a great spot to be in if you're looking to enter this field, because every company now knows. It used to be, hey, I think we need to be in this space. But I think most companies have now figured out we have to be in this space. So you can compete for jobs right away. And there's not many fields of discipline where you can come in and be in control the moment you start. Like I mentioned earlier, we have two people that work for us. They're 24 and 23. And, they send tweets and post on Instagram from the Houston Texans and our millions of followers. So it's a great place to be in, great place to compete. And again, if you can show somebody and convince them that you have a general aptitude of how to do it, they're going to let you jump right in. So that's really fun and exciting. And I would encourage them to keep working at it, stay with it, and don't be afraid to keep learning.
Awesome. And let's wrap up the conversation with, if you could tell people how they can follow you on social media.
Yeah, of course. Twitter for sure is probably the easiest way to get me, at Eric San, ERICSAN. My last name is way too long to try to make it a Twitter handle. So that's a good place to find me. But I'm also on Facebook, Eric SanInocencio, LinkedIn, my name as well. Every platform you can find me on. And if your students ever have any questions or just more information on what we talked about tonight, they're always welcome to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to help wherever I can.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Eric.
Take care, man.
Appreciate you. Thanks.